I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. Today, I am talking to Chris Schwartzenberger, who lives in Spokane, Washington. I interviewed Chris a while back and got his backstory, but today we're talking to him because his church has been growing. It's experienced signs of revival, and look forward to sharing and talking to him and finding out what exactly God is doing in the Northwest. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Chris, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to catch up again.
I have heard there's some really good news coming from Spokane, and I wanted to just get back in touch. We talked a while back. Of course, we're friends from way back. But what's been happening in your world since we last talked?
Well, a lot. We've been here in Spokane for coming up on, I think, 12 years now.
Whoa.
It's been a long kind of stand here in the city that I was converted and leading the church here. And I'm wrapping up actually today. I have a thesis defense and wrapping up a master's program. And so we've been raising 3 kids, going to graduate school, leading a church, and shifted back into campus ministry about 10 months ago. And so we've been headlong into everything. We've been very busy, kind of working through the church here.
Well, in our conversations, and also my daughter is in your church. Thank you for taking care of her. Chris, I've heard that your church is growing since we last talked. Can you share with me what's been happening?
Yeah, we've kind of come into a incredible harvest season. God's been really moving people's hearts in incredible ways. It probably started about a year ago. We started seeing some teens in the church, some youth started to seek God, and a couple of them got baptized in the spring and into the summer. And then one of the decisions we made was Amy and I went back to work in campus ministry. We felt like we really wanted to see that group grow, and we had a few great disciples. We had about 5 disciples that we thought we could really build something with. And so in the summertime, we made a decision to hire an intern to come in and help us. We hired Ty Vienna to come in. He was a student at Washington State University. He's part of the Palouse Church down there with our buddy Brian Daly. And he moved up here and was just kind of the kindling, the spark to the kindling that we needed to really just kind of ignite the energy of the campus, which in turn, when partnered with the energy of the teens, just led the church to this phenomenal season of growth. And a lot of it just has to do with the great relationships we had with the Palouse Church and people moving up here and people that they had met in undergrad who are now in graduate school. And so we've seen, I think it was 8 teens baptized in this year, and our campus went from 5 to 16.
Wow.
The past couple semesters. And that growth hasn't just been in that demographic. We've seen 7 marrieds baptized in that time. And a couple singles, and like I said, 7 teens that got baptized, and it's just incredible just to see kind of this bumper crop, if you will. If we're speaking in harvest metaphors, it's been a bumper crop, and we had 2 baptisms last weekend and 3 the weekend before. We got 1 this weekend, and it's just endless. It's an endless cycle of what God's been doing, and I think kind of the long-standing work that God's been doing in the hearts of people, and we just get to partner with Him and watch it happen.
That is so exciting. Okay, so where was your church at size-wise, let's say 2 years ago, and where's it at currently?
So we've always, for the past 5 or 6 years, we've always had like 7 to 10 baptisms a year. We were right around 100. But the transient kind of population of Spokane, we'd always have so many move-outs that we never gained traction, right? People would graduate, move on. Young marrieds would go look for new jobs.
Right.
And so we just kind of hovered around like 100. And I think to start last year, we were at 106. And then the start of this past fall semester, we were at 111.
Wow.
And since then, we've grown to about 140.
140.
Yeah.
That is so exciting, Chris. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's
Been
break
great.
it down. What's been the difference? What's helped?
I don't think there was one, thing we did. I mean, we definitely hired a great intern. Ty's been incredible. He's going to nursing school and just is an evangelistic machine. I think my wife has worked really, really hard. She didn't get a tie. She's soloing it with helping all these young women, and she's in 5 or 6 campus Bible studies a week. But me and a brother were talking about the other night, and he shared, he's so excited. He said, there's so many people showing up to church, not just college students, but single people off the street, young marrieds, just people are just showing up to church seeking God. And he's like, he was contemplating, he's like, there's so many people I can't meet them. Our group is trying to figure out, how do we have these people into our home? How do we take care of them? How do we make sure they get to the next stage of faithfulness? How do we help the campus to mature and what have you? And I said, that I think is why God is blessing this. It's not what we're doing, it's our posture that we want. We're anticipating what God's going to do. We're open to whatever God does, and everybody's hearts are kind of softened to like participate in that. But the title of my sermon this weekend is going to be uh, limiting our expectations and just living in anticipation, not deciding what God's going to do and waiting for it, but just anticipating whatever God does. We're ready, and I feel like the church has moved that way, and we've been working really, really hard to kind of remove the mechanisms of ministry and get to the heart of it. And I think one point that really stood out to me was a leaders meeting not too long ago, um, where a great sister, raised her hand during the kind of Q&A time, and she goes, "I want to make this public, and I want everybody to hear this." And I was like, "Oh no, uh-oh." And she said, "I haven't always understood what you and Amy were doing in transitioning the church and leading the church, but I get it now. You were holding us accountable and calling us to take responsibility for the work of the ministry." And and I said, "That's it. That's what we've been trying to do for 5 or 6 years. Not make it minister led, or not make it about me or Amy or how we do things, but each individual disciple just loving God and loving their neighbor, and we're seeing the fruit of that."
Wow. Okay. A couple questions branch off of that. First of all, like how did you do that? You say you've passed on responsibility onto the membership. Was there a mechanism to do that? I mean, that's got to be an intentional
Yeah.
process. What can you give some tips on what you did?
Yeah, I think we've tried to spread the responsibilities out to a lot of different people, which helps the church not bottleneck with Amy and I, and it makes it not our show. So we have what we call micro staffing. So we kind of hire people part time to take care of little things in the church, like children's ministry. We have great children's ministry coordinators, and they do extra events, and they do a little extra than a volunteer might do, and they make a little money, and it's really great. We do that with our youth ministry. And that's really great. Um, I think the biggest thing though was when it came to like small groups, we allowed a lot of flexibility and creativity. And what I mean by that is we focus on the character of the small group leader and the heart of the small group, but we don't define what the small group has to do. And I think that's really helped people to do radically different things. Some are primarily a Bible study group, and people come and they just study a book of the Bible. And some are purely evangelistic, and some are kind of restorative, and some are just big meals and feasts, and everybody wants to go to that group. And
Right.
and that flexibility for people to experience God where they're at, I think just has allowed God to work. And I think the teens have seen that, especially they see the faithfulness and the excitement in their parents, and they get excited too. And my friend Nate Chatelier, who's been on the podcast a couple times, they kind of started a group that was trying to replicate Revive Eastern Europe, and they tried to replicate some of those things here and had mini revives, and they've been a great asset and just kind of encouraging faith. And so I think those things where we just put it back on the brothers and sisters, like, you're a disciple. I'm here to equip you. It's kind of that Ephesians 4, pastors, teachers, evangelists are here to equip the church for the work of ministry. And that model has really helped us to kind of be what I like to say in the right posture. We're ready for what God is doing,
That's great. Now, you guys bought a church building a couple of years ago. I don't know how 2-3 years ago. What role
Yeah.
do you think that's played? How has that impacted your growth?
Yeah, I think having a facility and have a sign on a major highway is really helpful for getting just walk-in visitors. We get a lot of neighbors coming over. People drive by. I think they're thinking about God. They see our sign and they stop in. And the church has grown a lot in being ready for that. We've had to shift because normally you would ask somebody, "Hey, who brought you?" Because in our ICOC history, you're bouncing around from middle school gymnasiums to rec centers to
Right.
fields to parks, and nobody can find your church unless they were invited, right? Like it's almost like a Where's Waldo for the ICOC. And so we've had to shift to go, these people just come to seek God and we have to be ready to help them.
Hmm.
And so that's helped a lot. But even when we did that, we had the mindset of we're going to raise money and save money and be great stewards. And when God says, here's a place, we were ready. And, we saved for a long time and are debt free. We own it outright. And so there's this relief, and it's a pretty sweet space to be.
That is awesome. What do you think others could take away? I mean, what could you pass on that could be useful for other churches, other small churches elsewhere?
I think you have to go. I mean, I think it is the concept. I mean, I just thought of this week of like, I think what's helped me as a minister is I no longer define my expectations for what I want God to do. I'm just trying to keep myself in anticipation of what God will do. And I think that works in every dynamic because when we start to say, okay, I want to go from this to that, we've now defined what God's going to do. And God might be working on something else. And now we're not in sync with the Spirit. Now we're not working with what God wants. And that goes for anything we're doing. If we're going into a discipleship time, to not have expectation of what the results might be, because then we're defining how that person should repent or change or what they need, instead of going, okay, God, reveal what they need to do, reveal how I can help them.
Hmm.
And so at every level, just going in, going, um, God, what do you want to do? How are you going to grow the church? What's this going to look like? Because I remember my wife saying, Amy said, "Oh, we're going back to campus ministry. I'm in my late 30s and I have to go on campus and share my faith every day." And I said, "I don't think you're going to have to share your faith every day. I think this group's going to bring people to you." And she is literally nonstop. It's like a revolving door. We put a turnstile just to calculate how many people coming in for Bible studies, and she hasn't had to go cold share. We haven't had to do that because
Hmm.
friends bring out friends, bring out friends, bring out friends. Like the long line there is pretty good. So that would be my advice: is really work with God, create an atmosphere where you're ready to move wherever God tells you to move, and that when you're flexible, you're able to pivot with the Spirit, and that's what we've done. We've kind of pivoted finances. We've pivoted um, the way we schedule things, the way we do things, just to adapt to whatever God's presenting at that time. And so I think that flexibility helps a lot because God's working, and we get the privilege to partner with Him. We get the privilege to share the gospel. He doesn't need us, but He wants us to be with Him, and I think that's the key. I think that's what I would encourage people to discover.
Well, you had some dark years. There are some times, we talk where it's just discouraging and you had expectations, those things were met. And I think every small church leader goes through those times.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person now? If you could just go back in a little time machine and talk to yourself, what would you tell yourself, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, they were very, very dark years. I think I was trying to get out of the ministry. I often say those years were my Jonah years. I was trying to get out of going to Nineveh at all costs, and God kept me in. And maybe that was a belly of the well, but it wasn't 3 days. It was 3 to 6 years. I think you have to stay the course, and I think that was my that shift of um, not my will be done, but your will be done. And I think suffering breeds growth.
Hmm.
And if you think you're going to grow a ministry, if you think you're going to grow spiritually and not suffer, then you're in the wrong faith because Jesus suffered. Everybody who followed him and did great things with him, Peter, Paul, they all suffered. So where do we think we're going to get off? That's all going to be, rainbows and ponies and blue skies, and it's just going to magically just grow. And I think that is what I would say. Like, the suffering produces the fruit of righteousness that leads you to be able to see God do things in your midst.
That's
And
awesome. That's
and I think
awesome.
when that sister shared that, we'd been trying to change the culture and direction of the church for like 5 or 6 years to that
Mm,
point. And she and a couple others were like the last stalwarts of rebellion against that shift. And to feel that go away, and literally since then, we've seen 14 people baptized. Since she shared that, we've seen 14 people. I feel like just continuing to be like the prophets and Jeremiah and Isaiah and Ezekiel, just keep preaching, just keep doing what God's calling you to do, and you'll see it. But suffering and time are mandatory.
that's awesome. You've got something exciting happening today. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I defend my thesis today for my second master's. I've been in graduate school for 5 of the last 6 years, and it's been a journey. I respect and appreciate my wife so much for putting up with that. I don't think I realized how much work and time that took, or energy, but I'm excited to finish because I feel like I thought I was pursuing. I think that was one of my off ramps to get out of ministry, to jump out of the boat, and it's actually rekindled my passion for pastoral care and ministry. And
Mm,
so it's actually transitioning me into this pursuit of training as many as I can for the full time ministry. I think that's the next step. And so we're actually starting. I haven't shared this with you yet, but a ministry and training program based in Spokane for the Northwest, and we're really excited. A 1 week intensive. At our last campus retreat, there were 71 disciples there, 71 college students there, and 25 raised their hand to be a part of this ministry and training program. So there's
wow.
this fire in that generation, and we're bringing this kind of holistic approach of leadership that we've been living out into it. And so we're training them in, biblical studies and practical ministry and theology, all these things that we've kind of cultivated and I've cultivated in school. And we're partnering that with a lot of holistic, just how to live as a minister. And so we're bringing in Brian Mackey to talk finances and how to save and invest so that you're not, scraping by trying to figure out how to retire as a 70-year-old minister. Like, how can they start early in that, And we're bringing in Daniel Corbett, who's a part-time personal trainer, part-time, full-time campus minister. And so he's going to help with health and wellness and,
Mm,
how to have longevity. And we're just trying to really build very solid leaders to take our family of churches to the next generation. As we kind of fade out and see our time go, we want to pass that torch well. So I think that all that time in school and completing this thesis is really rekindled that passion to train and raise up the next generation for me.
that is so exciting. So, what are your plans for the next 2 years? I mean, things have been going great. Like, I know you're trying to let the spirit guide, not have expectations, but got to have some idea. What are you shooting
Yeah,
for?
yeah. I think I'm going to get a PhD. No, I'm just kidding. That was just so for Amy. If she listens to this and she hears that, just that moment of panic in my wife is what I was going through there. No, I think the next focus is there's a there's a theory called Dunbar's number that about 150 we start to break down our social connections as humans. That's kind of the capacity for human relationships. So we're fastly approaching that, and so for the next 2 years, we're trying to figure out how do we maintain the closeness of community and grow grow churches and what have you. So we're talking about planting a church in the next couple of years nearby in North Idaho. We're starting to have more serious conversations about that. We have about 20 disciples already there, and beautiful Coeur d'Alene, and so that's on the horizon. The ministry and training program, I'm trying to think generationally. I like to put 20 more solid years into full-time ministry. Who am I going to pass it off to? And so the MIT program's big on our horizon. And so those are kind of our key focuses. I want to throw myself into that. And I think the third thing that Amy and I have talked about is creating new resources for people, kind of sharing our experiences and what we've learned and the relationships we have to kind of build stuff. We're crafting new follow-up studies. We're crafting new um, just little booklets and ideas and her life experience and stuff I've learned in school. And so that's kind of the next 2 years is kind of shifting do we pass this on to the next generation? Not let it just be in Spokane, not let it just stop with us, but really pass on the lessons God's taught us to other people.
That is so exciting. Well, I've got to ask you, are you planning on coming to the Climb Small Church Leadership Conference this October in Lansing, Michigan?
I'm hoping to. I think that sounds like a great thing I want to go to. Amy and I have to go to Miami for the RFC's meetings, but I have yet to make it to a small church leadership conference. I don't know what the cutoff for small church is, but if God keeps bringing people in, we might be disqualified at that point. But, yeah, I'd love to be there with you guys. I love the Joels. I love you, and I think the work that we're doing to help small churches is really, really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Chris, it's great to talk to you. Congratulations on all that God is doing there and for your perseverance. It's really, really impressive, and just praying for you all the best going forward.
Amen. Thanks. Appreciate it, Rob.
Thanks for listening. Here's how you can help support the program. First, let your friends know about the podcast. Secondly, read and review one of my books, either How to Plant and Grow a Church or Courage, How to Make This Life Count. You can find them on Amazon.com. Because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count, live a no regrets life, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day, and make this life count.